On Wednesday, January 2nd, I was ready for the first hike of the new year. Lisa had contacted me the night before and asked if I wanted to hike and suggested Bramley Mountain near Delhi or Utsanantha in Stamford. Since I had to coach in the afternoon, I decided on Bramley as it is closer and more of an actual hike. Sheila seemed a little less enthusiastic than normal as I got ready to pick up Lisa at their home on the Beaverkill Road at 8:30 a.m. The temperature was only 25 degrees and the high was forecast to be just short of freezing, so I decided to dress warmly. I put on a long-sleeve base layer and wore my Mammoth pullover, which is heavier than most others I own. I put on a pair of Columbia Omni Heat hiking pants which have a reflective lining and are heavier than my go-to Rail Riders pants. The pants have Velcro closures at the ankles, which means gaiters are not usually needed until the snow gets deeper. I donned my Mammoth hoodie, which has enough zippers to dump heat if needed. I put on a heavier hat and gloves. I wore my vast tailless hiking boots instead of the Salomon B52 winter boots, since I knew that any remaining snow would be frozen and hard-packed. I wear regular hiking boots whenever I can, as I feel they are a better fit and offer more support. I grabbed a pair of leaky poles with external locks that I have been using lately and made sure I had my micro spikes in my pack. I got my gear and Sheila in the car and headed up the Beaverkill Road to pick up Lisa. As soon as Sheila realized we are picking up Lisa, she began to get excited and greeted her with great enthusiasm. I drove through Loo Beach and turned left on Beach Hill Road. The road was a little rough, but we are soon at Route 30. I turned right and then left over the Dunraven Bridge. I turned left on Tremper's Kill Road and followed it into Andes, where I turned left on Route 28 north at the traffic light. After 7.5 miles, I turned right on Glenburnie Road and drove 3.3 miles to the parking area for Bramley Mountain. The parking area is small but is well marked, and it helped that we had been there before. I pulled into the parking area, turned around and parked at 9:15 a.m. There were no other cars in the lot, and I enticed. The temperature was 24 degrees despite some sun peeking through the clouds. I set my GPS and we started to hike by getting on the blue trail that follows a woods road to the quarry. I chose this way, even though I have hiked it before, as we could make a steep ascent and then a moderate descent on the red trail from the summit. I didn't know how much ice there would be. I preferred to encounter it on the way up rather than on the descent. The woods road was very open, and most of the water and mud was frozen. We walked along the road through the woods and I kept noticing features I had missed on previous hikes, including a small pond on the left side of the trail. I had only hiked the trails in spring, and summer and the absence of leaves made spotting some things easier. We eventually broke out into an open clearing, where we continued toward the quarry. At about 0.8 miles we came to the quarry, and I decided not to stop to take some pictures. When we started out again, we came to a spot where the trail seemed to split with blue markers going both left and right. There was no sign or indication which way we should go to get to the summit. I knew the answer was to bear right, but first-time visors might have a problem. Lisa, who had not been on the trails before, took a quick hike to the top of the left trail before joining me. We followed the main trail to the right. The trail entered the woods and immediately turned almost 180 degrees. As we walked along the trail, it headed up the mountain at points and then shifted so that it was parallel to the ridge. There are several impressive stone walls along the way, but the forest was almost completely clear of obstructions. We did find that the blazes were few and far between, and we relied heavily on Sheila to show us the way. Eventually the trail turned. It began a steady climb up to the summit. The trail passed by several interesting ledges and rock formations, and we stopped in one spot for some pictures. There were numerous switchbacks which made the walk longer but mitigated some of the steeper climbs. Surprisingly, there was very little ice on the trails, which made the walk easier than I had expected. Near the top the trail passed around and went through some rock ledges, and the trail crew had expertly created some steps out of natural materials. 3 times the trail crossed woods roads that climbed the mountain. At 1.9 miles and just before the summit we stopped at a nice viewpoint. The valley below was illuminated by some sunlight and the views were clear. I took a few pictures, including some of Sheila, before we hiked the last few hundred feet to the top. Over the 1.1 miles from the quarry we gained over 800 feet with an overall average grade of 14% despite the many switchbacks. When we reached the summit, I saw all 4 of the old pilings for the fire tower and hoped that the rumors about reconstructing the tower were true. We walked over to the rock ledges that form a lookout and down to the edge of a small cliff. There was more haze than I had hoped for and almost no clouds, but I took some shots anyway. To the south and southeast I could see the Pisgahs near Andes, which were once the site of a ski area. I walked down to the lower part of the lookout and took a few more pictures. When I was finished, I returned to the summit, where I had a drink and gave Sheila some water. We walked in the direction that the arrow pointed and found the markers for the Red Summit Trail that we would take back to the parking area. We started down the summit trail, which starts out as Wide Woods Road, but at 0.15 miles from the summit, markers clearly indicated a right turn. The trail follows another woods road and we immediately ran into a huge blowdown which blocked the trail. We went off the trail through some briars to avoid the tree. There was a nice view off to the left, but it was not much different than the view from the summit. I did take a few pictures of the trail along the ridge. We continued to follow the woods road as it entered the woods and led out to the upper parking area. A major blowdown which had completely blocked the trail was absent. I was watching for the trail to turn right into the woods to connect to the lower parking area, but somehow missed it. We walked back up the trail a few feet and turned left, where the trail entered the woods, and started downhill to the car. This part of the trail was soft and easy walking, but only lasted 0.15 miles. We were soon back at the car. It was 11:45 a.m., and we had hiked 3.6 miles in just under 2.5 hours. The elevation gain was 1025 feet. To get to the summit, the Red Summit Trail is both shorter and easier. The Blue Quarry Trail and its extension is harder, but also more interesting. On the way home we headed toward Delhi and crossed the stream at Fitch's Crossing. Once we were in Delhi, I followed familiar route home over Telford Hollow and through Downsville.